Hey girl, how's it being Queen of Narnia?
You know that changed when we came back through the wardrobe.
Geez, sorry. I hope we can get back there soon, though. Wait, I just got your last letter. Okay, you told your siblings about Narnia as soon as you found out? What the heck?
Why not? I trust them and I wanted to share my secret with them.
I definitely do not get that.
That makes sense, seeing as you don't have any siblings.
Well, I don't have brothers or sisters, but I do have Dickon and Colin. But I didn't tell them until I knew I could trust them.
Did they believe you?
Yeah, why wouldn't they?
My oldest brother and sister, Peter and Susan, they totally didn't believe me when I told them. I mean, I guess I should have waited like you did, because my brother Edmund, he totally messed things up for me. He kept making jokes about it that Peter and Susan thought I was lying the entire time.
Edmund sounds like a jerk.
Yeah, he was, and he totally double-crossed us while we were there, too. He almost gave our lives to the White Witch in exchange for sweets. But once he almost died because of that mistake, he promised he would never, ever go behind our backs again.
Blimey, the way he acted sounds like Colin acted when we first met. He kept making me tell him stories about the garden when I had better things to do in the garden. I totally whipped him into shape, though. But as soon as Dickon and I brought him into the garden, it was like a new life grew inside of him, and it was incredible.
Wow. Edmund has always been a grump ever since he was born. What do you think made Colin so cheeky?
Well, probably the fact that he never met his mother, and his father, Mr. Craven, never went to go visit him. He was literally cooped up in his room with his servants, and they were just waiting for him to die. I really can't blame his actions. He was totally defeated.
What the heck? Mr. Craven sounds so mean. He wouldn't even visit his ill son?
Well, it's not as simple as that. He had a lot of things going for him. He was actually a really nice guy. Besides from Colin and his housekeepers, he was all alone in that great big house before I got there.
He sounds like the professor. I mean, he lived all alone in that big mansion before we got there. So when we did, we had so much room to run and play. It was actually... We had to keep away from McCready. She got so mad when we disturbed her, but other than that, it was totally fine. We were actually hiding from her when we discovered Narnia.
Mrs. Medlock was the same way. When I would go visit Colin in the middle of the night, I was terrified that she would catch us. But then once Colin and I were like formally introduced and like he knew I was like a real person instead of one of his dream people, it was a lot easier to go talk to him. But then he started calling on me over and over, day after day, like I was one of his servants, and I was not about that life. But he probably would not have been like that if his father went to go visit him more, you know.
How did you get Colin to change?
Well, I definitely learned from my own experience. I used to be just as sour as Colin when my parents were neglecting me back in India.
You used to live in India? That's so cool, but why are you in England now?
Lottie, this is a long story. You have time?
Sure, I guess.
Well, I used to live in India with my parents until literally everybody died. So, that's great. But then I was saved from the fact that nobody cared about me. So I just kind of hid in a room until somebody came to find me. And once they did, I was shipped off to the English countryside to live with my uncle, Mr. Craven, Colin's dad. And I treated the housekeepers here the same way until finally I became less awful. But until that point, I was the worst.
Same. Well, about my parents, not about being awful. I was always the nicest Pevensey kid. Anyway, my father went off to war, and it was so dangerous in the city with all the bombs and everything that we had to be shipped off to the countryside by ourselves. Our mom couldn't come with us, so it was just us, the professor, and Mrs. McCready in that house by ourselves. We had nothing to do, so we were playing hide and seek when we discovered Narnia. I was totally not expecting it at all when I was going through a bunch of coats and then suddenly stepping on snow.
Really? I was totally looking for my secret garden. When I got here, one of the housekeepers, Martha, she was telling me about this garden that Colin's mom used to go in, and it was like her own garden, and so I wanted that for myself. At that point, I had nothing for myself to just keep a secret, and I had been sharing everything with everyone. So one day I was just walking along and this robin flew down and pointed right to where the key was. So I had the key. I knew I needed that for the doors, you know. And then another day I was just walking along and I found the doors. The wind just swept the vines aside and the doors were right there. But although it was an accident, it was totally pre-planned. Like, I was looking for this garden.
OMG, you talk to animals too?
But my friend Dickon, he kinda does. He's super cool like that.
I bet Dickon would think it's super cool that all the animals talk back to you in Narnia.
Did you meet any talking animals in Narnia?
Yeah, our BFFs while we were there were a couple of beavers. They were so cute and super helpful while we were there, showing us around, telling us all about Narnia. We would not have survived without them. Isn't it funny how adults turn out nicer than they seem to be? Even though Peter and Susan didn't believe me, when they told the professor, he believed every word. And when we came back through the wardrobe after living in Narnia for years, he comforted me and told me that there might be hope I can get back.
I agree with what you're saying about adults being unexpectedly nice. When I first met Ben Weatherstaff, he was one of the gardeners. He was so cranky and rude, as old people will be. But then once I got to know him, he actually was really nice and friendly.
Mr. Tumnus faked me out too. The first time I was there, he tried to kidnap me and turn me over to the White Witch.
Kidnap? You were friends with this guy?
Well, it was all one big mistake, really. After I got to know him, it was clear that he would never hurt a fly. He was absolutely the sweetest fawn I'd ever met in Narnia.
Oh, sorry, I actually have to go. Dickon said he would help me replant the tulips from last year, so.
Bye! I can't wait to get your next letter.